If there is a second life running in your head, a whole other version of you with its own conversations, its own rooms, its own people, this one is about you. And I want to be precise about what I mean, because there is an entire life happening in your head, and it probably has more continuity than most of the things you do out loud. It has recurring characters. It has a version of you that talks differently. You return to it the way other people return to a series. By the end of this, you'll know what that second life is actually asking for, because it's asking for something quite specific, and it's almost never the thing it looks like from the outside. Start with the moment you enter it, because nobody decides to. You're in the shower, you're on a bus, you're walking the last 5 minutes home, and you don't choose to start. You notice you're already in the middle of a scene. Somebody is saying something to you. You're saying something back, and it's landing exactly the way you'd want it to land. And then a car horn or a door or your own name pulls you out, and there's a half second of something close to embarrassment, and you carry on with your day and mention it to nobody. Now, let me separate this from a thing it gets confused with. This isn't the 3 in the morning replay of a conversation that already happened. Going back over what you said, editing it, delivering the line you didn't deliver, that's a different mechanism, and it's about closing something that stayed open. This is not repair, this is construction. You're building something that never existed, and you keep building it, and some of you have been building the same one for years. So here's the first thing worth noticing, and it's the detail that unlocks everything else. You don't imagine events. You imagine how people react to you. Sit with that for a second because it sounds small and it isn't. Think about what actually happens in your version. If you imagine success, you're not really imagining the work. You're imagining the moment someone finds out. If you imagine confrontation, you're not imagining the argument. You're imagining the face of the person understanding they were wrong about you. If you imagine a different life, there's someone in that life looking at you like you're finally legible. Try the test. Take your most familiar scene and remove every other person from it. Keep the house, the money, the city, the body, the outcome. Take out the audience. For most people, the scene collapses. It stops being interesting almost immediately, which tells you the content was never the point. What you're rehearsing is being seen, and not seen in general, seen accurately, seen as the version of yourself you privately believe is the real one. That's why the imagined life is so specific and why it's so hard to describe to anyone. It isn't a wish list, it's a correction. It's you running the scenario where the gap closes between who you know you are and what people apparently see when they look at you. And there's a detail inside this that most people notice the moment it's pointed out. Look at who is in your scenes. Not the strangers, not the crowd, the one whose reaction actually matters. It's usually not a stranger at all. It's a specific person or a composite of 2 or 3, and it's very often somebody who once got you wrong, a parent who had a fixed idea of you, someone who chose differently, somebody whose opinion you would deny caring about if anyone asked. That's worth knowing because it means the scene isn't random and it isn't just entertainment. Your mind selected the audience. It picked the exact person whose recognition would settle the account, and then it kept staging the moment they finally give it. Now let's talk about why your brain is willing to spend so much time on this, because it isn't a malfunction, and I don't want to hand you one more thing to feel bad about. Imagining is a working tool. A large part of what your mind does all day is run the next few minutes ahead of you. What happens if I say this? What happens if I don't? It's a simulator, and the whole value of a simulator is that you get the information without paying for the mistake. You can test a version of a conversation without having it. That's not a weakness. That's most of what thinking is. The problem isn't the tool. The problem is that inside your head there is no resistance. Think about what actually shapes a real interaction. The other person interrupts, or they don't get it, or they get it and don't care, or they're tired, or they answer a different question than the one you asked. Every real exchange pushes back and knocks your version slightly out of shape, and that pushing back is what makes it real. In your head, nobody pushes back. Every line lands. The timing is perfect because you're writing both parts. Nobody looks at their phone while you're talking. So the imagined version isn't better because you're bad at real life. It's better because it was built with the friction removed. You are comparing something engineered to something that has weather in it. Of course, it wins. And for a lot of people, this didn't start recently. It started early, and it started as something useful. If you were a child whose inside didn't match what the adults around you seemed to see, called quiet when you were thinking, difficult when you were overwhelmed, fine when you weren't, then somewhere in there you built a room nobody could come into, and in that room you were accurate. You were understood, correctly described, the version of yourself you recognized. That wasn't avoidance. For a child with no other options, that's a functioning solution, and it worked. The trouble is that solutions outlive the conditions they were built for. You're not that child. The adults have changed, and the room is still there. Still open, still furnished, still better lit than most of your actual afternoons. And that leads to the part that does the actual damage, which is not the daydreaming itself. The feeling gets paid out first. Here's what I mean. You wanted a particular feeling. To be respected, to be chosen, to be finally understood. In the scene, you get it. Not a weak version of it. The real emotional payload arrives in your body, on the bus, for free. And a feeling you've already been paid stops being urgent. That's the mechanism. Not laziness, not lack of discipline. Satiation. Something in you has registered the reward as received, and the real version of it now has to compete against something you already got without risking anything. So the phone call doesn't get made, the thing doesn't get said, not because you decided against it, but because the pressure that would have pushed you into it has already been released. And notice what that costs on the other side too. The version of you in the scene is fluent. Real you in the actual room is not, because real you has never practiced the part where somebody interrupts. So the gap between the two widens and the head version gets more appealing and you spend more time there. That's the loop. It's not dramatic. It just quietly narrows things. There's one more cost, and it's the quietest one. You've never told anyone. Think about how strange that is. This is possibly the most consistent thing in your life. Years of it, the same characters, the same rooms, and there is nobody on earth who could describe it. And the reason is that you've decided in advance what it would sound like. Childish, unwell, sad, so you keep it sealed and the sealing does something. It turns a normal feature of a rich inner life into evidence of a private defect. For what it's worth, almost everyone has some version of this. The ones who look like they don't are usually just as private about it as you are. Now, here's the turn, and it's the reason I wanted to make this one. The content of your second life is not embarrassing. It's information. It's probably the most honest note you've ever written to yourself, and you've been treating it as something to hide. Because what you imagine tells you exactly what's missing. Not vaguely, precisely. If the scene is always someone finally understanding you, being explained, being read correctly, you're not short of company. You're short of being known. There may be plenty of people around you, and not one who has the full picture. If the scene is always being chosen, picked, wanted, preferred over someone else, the deficit is belonging. Some part of you is currently living as optional, and it is noticed. If the scene is always being respected, someone realizing they underestimated you, you're carrying an unpaid bill. You've done things nobody credited you for, and the ledger stayed open. And if the scene is always simply elsewhere, another city, another life, no particular person in it, that's the one worth taking most seriously. That's not a wish. That's your mind reporting that your current life has no exit anywhere in it, and it has started drawing one. None of those are diagnoses. They're just the question your imagination has been asking on a loop while you weren't listening. So what do you actually do with it? And I'm not going to tell you to stop, because it isn't a bad habit and you couldn't stop anyway. The move is smaller than that. Take the scene and find the smallest real piece of it, the smallest thing that exists in the physical world. Not the outcome, not the house or the recognition or the version of you that speaks perfectly. If it's being understood, the real piece is one sentence said out loud to one person, badly. If it's being chosen, the real piece is being the one who reaches out first, once, without checking whether it's your turn. If it's being respected, the real piece is letting somebody see one piece of work you'd norm. It will be worse than the version in your head. That's not failure. That's the whole point. What you're doing is putting the friction back. Real things are the only ones that can push back on you, and pushing back is the only way anything gets more solid. And one honest note before the end, because it matters. For most people, this is a normal part of having an inner life. But for some people, it takes hours of the day, gets chosen over sleep, over work, over actual company. There's a name for that pattern, and it usually sits on top of something else worth looking at. If that's closer to your version than the one I've described, that's not a character flaw, and it's not something to solve alone. It's worth saying out loud to someone whose job it is to listen. If any of this landed, there are 3 of these a week. One mechanism at a time. Explain the way it actually works. That's the whole channel, because the second life isn't the problem, and it was never something to be ashamed of. It's the clearest note you have about what you want. You just have to stop reading it in private and start letting the world get a look at the person you've been rehearsing.